What do polices, parliament, pregnancies, and palaces have in common? At long last, the final episode of Queen Charlotte. Cheerio, everyone. This is D. Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today, of course, I'm coming to you all with another episode of Queen Charlotte, Season 1, Episode 6, our season finale, Crown Jewels. This episode is directed by Verica and written by Shonda Rhimes. And now, let us commence. So, we open up this episode, unfortunately, seeing Dr. Munro.
Move this man!
Meeting with Princess Augusta at St. James Palace. Princess Augusta is very confused about Queen Charlotte's move to Q. What will become of the king's treatments now? Dr. Munro informs her that he has officially been dismissed by the queen. We then jump forward to 1815, where we see Lady Danbury and Violet preparing to take a walk. Once again, Violet is mentioning how excited and hesitant she is to embark on this new journey of finding love again. Lady Danbury, of course, is there to encourage her, but she leaves the room to find her pelisse, as there's a chill in the air. And for those who are not familiar, a pelisse is a 19th century garment worn by ladies, and summarily, it is a long fitted coat with set-in sleeves and the then fashionable empire waist. Unfortunately, the Violet decides to take a peek at Lady Danbury's mantelpiece, and what should she discover behind the clock but one of the hats that her father made for her all those years ago? We are also seeing Queen Charlotte having yet another blowout with her children at a family portrait sitting. The heirs, where are the heirs? That is the ever-constant question. We then hit our title card, and we see Charlotte meeting George in the observatory. Although he appears to be on the mend, he seems to once again believe that Charlotte should simply return to Buckingham House. And I'm just like, sir, she's seen it all, she knows it all at this point. So like pushing to be separate and pushing like, okay, you're not in a position to demand that anymore. I'm sorry. But George keeps pushing, he's screaming and yelling like that he commands it, and he's demanding for her to go, and Charlotte's like, no, I will stay. I command it. I was like, you better let him know. George starts pushing again, much more passively this time, and Charlotte's like, look, I get it. I understand what you're saying. You've said a whole lot, blah, 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 blah. But what I have not heard you say is that you don't love me. She also realizes that it is likely because of his love for her that he wants to create this distance. George mentions that he's only trying to protect her. But as for Charlotte, she realizes that, you know what? I love you so much that I will do exactly as you ask. I will go back to Buckingham House. We can live our separate lives. I will raise our child, and we can just go on like this, if that's really what you want. But in order to do that, he has to tell her that he does not love her. And he's going on and on about his mental state and how he's unstable and he's dangerous and so on and so forth. In his mind, he can actually feel the heavens and the earth colliding. And she tells him, I will stand with you between the heavens and the earth. I will tell you where you are. Do you love me? And finally, with tears in his eyes, he admits that yes, he loves her. He has loved her from the moment he met her. His heart calls her name. And at last, they embrace as George begins to sob quietly. Like, there can be so many things that test love, and sometimes love is seemingly not enough. So seeing something as debilitating as, you know, one's mental state, and Charlotte really pushing past and like completely blowing past, you know, the stigma of that and saying like, I don't care. Like, I love you, you love me, and we will deal with whatever comes. I thought that was powerful. And I think that's how it should be. And I understand it can, there are things that complicate that, but I just think the idea of loving someone past things that they can't control like that, and just really like professing love and just clinging to that love and finding strength in that, I think that's so poignant and so beautiful. Next, we see Lady Danbury being dressed by her maid Coral for solitude once more. We then see Lady Danbury anticipating said solitude, and we see her waiting on the grounds for Lord Ledger. But surprise, surprise, he does appear with his daughter Violet. And I'm just like, imagine meeting what will become your future best friend and knowing that not only have you already slept with her father, but slept with her very married father at that. I'm just like, look, Shonda, Rhimes, and whoever else is responsible, sorry. It's a no for me. In the end, Lord Ledger and Lady Danbury thank each other for their kindness toward each other. And it's very clear that this is the end of the road for them both. Thank God. We then see Princess Augusta attempting to smooth things over with Lord Bute in regards to the House of Lords. As everything appears to be progressing fairly well, Lord Bute can now let Parliament know that the king is available to give an address. For obvious reasons, Princess Augusta is not happy about this. Then in 1815, we see Prince George and Princess Elizabeth taking their mother to task for her cruelty and insensitivity regarding the so-called baby race. She has no real understanding of what her children have subjected themselves to, attempting to prove themselves to her. Elizabeth even goes so far as to reference the many children she has lost, attempting to bring forth an heir, which is something her siblings can also relate to, something Charlotte was obviously not aware of. George recognizes that their happiness has never been their mother's goal. She has remained their queen, but never their mother. We flash back to less precarious times, and we see Reynolds attempting to reach out to Charlotte regarding the instability of George's condition. But Charlotte feels that at this point, George has everything he needs and that the situation has been resolved. And I'm just like, look, the way that mental health and psychology works, that's nice, but there's a whole lot more to that than just saying like, oh, everything's fine now. And it's like, the other shoe is going to drop. I don't want it to drop, but I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. We also see Lady Danbury attempting to broach the subject of inheritance once again with Princess Augusta, but as Lady Danbury has no new information to offer, her efforts come to naught. When Princess Augusta attempts to visit her son in Kew, she gets some unexpected pushback from Charlotte. Princess Augusta warns Charlotte that attempting to speak for the king could be considered treason. Charlotte mentions that although she is not the king, she is Princess Augusta's queen. Clap back! They continue to face off, but in the end, Princess Augusta simply departs, while also letting Charlotte know that he must now face Parliament, and that his fate is entirely in Charlotte's hands. In 1815, we see Violet broaching the subject of gardens blooming and what that experience was like for Lady Danbury after her husband passed.
It's a trap!
Lady Danbury is vague, but she makes it clear that she has lived a life, and that's all that she will say. But when Violet continues to press her, she mentions Adolphus, aka the Queen's brother. Speaking of which, we see this very same situation playing out for the young Lady Danbury. Adolphus is interested in calling upon her, as he will be in England longer than expected due to the impending birth and her now officially being out of mourning. See? Now this I can get behind. However, there's a little more going on here than just casual attraction. It appears that Lady Danbury can now resolve the issue of inheritance by simply marrying Adolphus. But something tells me it won't be quite that easy. Next, we see George drafting his speech to Parliament in an extreme state of anxiety. An anxiety that only increases when Charlotte suddenly goes into labor. despite some obvious pushback from the Archbishop of Canterbury and Lord Bute. When Charlotte asks for him, George quickly makes his way into the birthing chamber. That whole concept is wild to me. Like, you're gonna tell this man, like, how dare he be inside comforting his wife as she goes through what is arguably one of the most dangerous processes for women, especially in those times. You're just gonna tell the man, like, no, let's just stay out here the whole time. Like, no. I'm so glad I'm so glad he was like, yeah, no, that's gonna be a no for me. I'm gonna be there for my wife. The labor is intensified when George realizes that the baby is breech. But with the doctor's help and Brimsley, Lady Danbury, and George's support, the new heir to the English throne is finally born. Next, we see Duke Adolphus and Lady Danbury out and about. It is clear that Lady Danbury is adjusting to being out of mourning, as evidenced by her fuchsia hot pink dress. I actually really liked what they both had on. I liked, Lady Danbury's colors and her look. And then, this whole floral look that Adolphus had on. They look pretty good together. However, I can't even fully enjoy this moment because who should Lady Danbury see but Lord Ledger? Her eyes meet his and it's some passionate, moment of longing and, the love. And I was like, oh no. I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. I'm not going for it. And then obviously this is going to interfere with the whole Adolphus situation. I'm so over it. We see Lady Danbury and Princess Augusta meeting, and it is the same situation as before. Princess Augusta wants information that Lady Danbury will not give. Realizing that her home, her livelihood, and pretty much everything she's attained up until now will most likely be lost, Lady Danbury does something that we have never seen her do. She bursts into tears. Princess Augusta is clearly unprepared for this. She's like, okay, no, okay, wait, stop, no, I need you to stop, wait, no. She dismisses the attendant from the room, and she has a very surprising moment with Lady Danbury. She pours her some brandy, shocker, and she makes it clear that although she does not care about Lady Danbury's problems or anything she has going on, she does decide to share a backstory involving her life, George, and the experience with her father-in-law. Back then, she found herself having to basically throw herself on the mercy of her father-in-law after her husband died. Unfortunately, and unsurprisingly, he proved to be a very cruel and evil man who had no problem abusing both herself and George. But she endured, she made it through, and eventually she was able to secure her son on the English throne and control her own fate in the process. She may not like Lady Danbury, but she has been an admirable adversary thus far. And since their battles bring her some degree of satisfaction, this ain't gonna work. Suck it up, deal with it, endure, and do not lose control of your fate. I love it. We see Charlotte discussing the aftermath of George's address with Brimsley and Reynolds, and she realizes that George never actually made it out of the carriage to give the address. And Reynolds once again reminds her of what he said before, like, I get that you had hope, but this is reality, and you have to deal with it. She then finds George lying under the bed in their bedroom, and since she can't convince him to come out, she then slides under there with him. I will say this gave me just a little bit of nostalgia. I used to love crawling under the bed, like being hidden away and just being able to just kind of have a little bit of a hideout. Of course, I'm a little too big to do that now, but yeah, definitely some fond memories there. George feels as if he is no one's king. And worse, there is no cure for his affliction. He will understand if Charlotte decides to leave, because she has half a husband and therefore half a life. Charlotte simply says, if it's half, then we'll make the best of it, because together, we're whole. And as far as Parliament is concerned, if the crown cannot go to Parliament, perhaps Parliament should come to the crown. We also see Lady Danbury speaking once again to Adolphus, and with his business concluded, he now desires to return to Germany with her as his wife. There's really not much else to say because I already know the outcome of this. And then in 1815, we see Violet basically figuring something out, something I was already aware of, and she's having one of her maids going up to the attic to find something. Yeah, I saw this coming a mile away. Finally, we make it to the night of the ball put in place to celebrate the new prince. And I have to say, the whole setup of the ball immediately took me back to the series premiere of Bridgerton and that whole outdoor ball situation, that whole setup they had at the end of the episode. With a boost of confidence from Charlotte, the king and queen officially make their way out in public, smile and wave to the people, then make their way to the dance floor. And they begin to dance as a quartet version of Nobody Gets Me by SZA plays in the background. As with most dances in the series, I couldn't help but enjoy it. And in the end, everything goes off without a hitch, ending with a kiss between the king and queen, followed by a toast to the future King George IV. We see Adolphus and Lady Danbury have a conversation about marriage, and of course, there has to be something to disrupt this situation. It can't be smooth sailing, thanks to Lord Ledger. So, of course, Adolphus is talking about, the duties she would have to take on and having 2 or 3 more children to provide heirs. And Lady Danbury realizes, look, this ain't gonna work, okay? I think she realizes, the independence and the freedom she has now and just what she would be trading that for. Although Adolphus, would be a good guy, she wouldn't have a bad life with him, but it just wouldn't be anything close to the life she has now. Although this may be a terrible mistake she's making, it is her mistake to make. I felt bad for Adolphus, but I also absolutely understood where Lady Danbury was coming from. It's like, look, I am free, and even a more desirable marriage is still marriage and it's still being placed into, something like, I'm not that person anymore. So yeah, in the end, I got it, just there's no comparison to freedom. None. We also see Princess Augusta meeting with Charlotte, and she tells her that all she's ever wanted is George's happiness. And she realizes that George is finally happy because of her, and she thanks her for that. I was just like, man, come on with the good vibes and the energy and just all these feel-good moments. I am here for it. We also see George and Charlotte dancing once more as a quartet version of I Will Always Love You, sung by both Dolly Parton and Whitney Houston, plays in the background. And we also see Brimsley and Reynolds laughing and dancing as well, far away from the festivities. And then we see Brimsley dancing by himself in the future, like recalling that moment. Now, I can only imagine what actually happened with Reynolds. I'm pretty sure we're not going to find out until next season, but the fact that we see Brimsley so many years in the future, much, much older, and still recalling that memory of when he was young and happy with Reynolds, yeah, I have to say, they really got me with that one. We then see the Queen observing the new family portrait and then speaking to Edward and Victoria, rocking a full silver fro, which I love. And they have brought with them the greatest possible news. Victoria is with child. And she is so overcome with emotion that she just grabs Edward and she embraces him. And he's kind of like, okay, I'm not used to this. But eventually he kind of warms up and embraces her as well. But yes, the Queen is very excited for them both. And she's actually happy with it potentially being a girl because a strong queen is something that this country might need. And who would know that better than she? However, flashing back, we see that the young Queen Charlotte is not exactly feeling excitement nor happiness where Lady Danbury is concerned. She does not appreciate the way she has strung her brother along and now broken his heart at her ball. But what really disturbs Charlotte is the fact that Lady Danbury felt no need to come to her regarding any of her concerns with her inheritance, her family, like everything she had going on, she said nothing. And I'm kind of like, yeah, that's on you, Lady Danbury. Because I'm like, I wish I would be friends with the queen and just be like, oh no, I'll just do like she's the queen. Like, who's gonna check her? You know what I'm saying? Like,
who gonna check me, boo? I have.
Anyway.
Are you okay?
No.
She's the queen. So yeah, when she said that, I was like, yeah, that was not smart. Like, you gotta take the L on that one. She advises Lady Danbury that in the future, she turn her fear into faith and to come to both her and the king with her concerns directly. And with that, she dismisses Lady Danbury, but tells her that she'll send for her very soon. And as for George, Charlotte informs him that it's probably going to be a little too soon to celebrate by having a drink because she won't be able to do that for a while. Yes, she is in fact with child again, which, considering how many children they have in the future, is not surprising. We then jump forward to 1815 once more, and we see Violet visiting Lady Danbury, and it appears that D-Day is finally here. We also see the adult Queen Charlotte making her way to Hugh to visit her husband. At first, everything seems futile, as he is once again having a moment with the scribblings and the drawings on the wall. But then Charlotte decides to slide under the bed, as they did so many years ago, and he immediately responds to that. She quickly informs him of the news regarding Edward's wedding and the future heir. She is happy to realize that this line will live on, and Georgia says, "Our line." He then thanks her, and for a brief moment, she sees him as she did the first time she met him. They then embrace, as George reminds her that she didn't go over the wall. And in that moment, he also sees her as he did the first time he met her, all those years ago. And we see that through triumph and tragedy, successes and losses, the love of Queen Charlotte and King George still lives on. Long may they reign. And that closes out Episode 6, our season finale, Crown Jewels. Woo! This has been a journey. I don't have a whole lot to say. I know it took me much longer to get to the end of this than I intended. Thank you for everyone who hung in there with me. And, I just appreciate the comments, just the support. It's definitely appreciated. And I'm happy to finally be jumping back in and closing this out. And I am definitely excited to see this show return. I think in many ways, well, not even many ways. It's definitely superior to the second season of Bridgerton. I enjoyed aspects of it, but I just think the Ponderosa, as I call it, I just think that disrupted some stuff, and just the writing, I just think it wasn't in place. It just didn't hit the same way the first season did. I don't know, the dynamics of this works so much better, and to me it's a lot more intriguing. And I thought it was additionally cool being able to see the story from the side of royalty and the monarchy. We've seen it kind of from the perspective of the ton, so to speak, but seeing it, behind the curtain, behind the throne, I thought that was cool. So I would love to see more of that. And I am definitely excited to see what's coming next in the world of Bridgerton. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you with the movie.